Hello, my name is Amelia Fortunato, and for this project, I have chosen to discuss the Renaissance period. The Renaissance was an age of extreme booming progress. Preceding the Dark Age, man finally had the luxury to create again. Many of the best-known artists, writers, philosophers, architects, scientists, and explorers and theologians emerged within this time period. To name a few, Da Vinci, Erasmus, Galileo, Chaucer, Dante, Shakespeare, Christopher Columbus, and Martin Luther. These men quite literally changed the course of history and set us up to become the world we are today. In 476 AD, Italy had experienced much devastation as a result of the fall of Rome. Between then and the 14th century, Italy struggled with sickness, war, and the ultimate depravity of physical and mental stimulation. However, after being stuck within this devastation and depravity, Italy was anxious to begin living in full color again, giving way for the fervency of the Renaissance to show off. Of course, historians all have their opinions on the origins of this booming enthusiasm for art and learning. Some perceive its progress as being funded by the rewards of capitalism. However, Christian historians solely think increased literacy and the mass reproduction of scripture for the sudden nationwide enlightenment which the Renaissance represents. Really, my favorite era within the Renaissance started with Johann Gutenberg's invention of the printing press in 1450. Sure, this also helped mobilize the latest art trends and philosophies and discoveries at the time, but mostly it allowed for the mass production of scripture, making it accessible to the public. Thus giving way to my favorite era within the Renaissance, the Protestant Reformation. At this time, the Catholic Church was gatekeeping the scripture by not allowing the common man to read it for himself, and of course this allowed for the church to skew God's truth in any way that they pleased. This goes along with the event that reminds me of the Renaissance so well, which is when Martin Luther, pioneer theologian, questioned the church's methods and nailed his 95 theses, or 95 questions that he had against the Catholic Church, to the Catholic Church's door in 1517. He sparked a revival enlightenment which inclined the hearts of the people back towards God. They began learning of God from the scriptures on their own, and with encountering God came the surge of creativity, invention, and thought that we remember the Renaissance by. The changes brought to the traditional understanding of God and the church were completely revolutionized by the tools handed to the people by the ability to suddenly think for themselves. At this time, there were two worldview philosophies pulling at each other, humanism and Christianity. Humanism, the belief that man is the center of their own subjective reality, is praised by secular historians as being the reason that the Renaissance began. Their logic is that because man began to praise education as personal gain, they began to prioritize education's place within society. However, I scarcely think this is true. I believe the success of the fame that the Renaissance experienced is because God blessed the nation. I believe it was his mighty hand at work. Also because Rome had just left a time of great need and were enjoying leisure once again. My dad always says that when a nation gets comfortable, they start looking for ways to entertain themselves. Of course, when he says this, he typically means it in a negative way, but I believe that this can also be a good thing, because just looking at the Renaissance age and how much prosperity they experienced during that time within art and within exploration and within just invention and science, the precedents that were set within that time period were amazing. But I also chose to discuss this era because of the parallel it holds to our nation in present-day America. We are becoming lazy, and we're looking for ways to entertain ourselves. And in this case, of course, it does carry a negative connotation. We have nearly completely overturned Christian values and focus solely on the humanistic belief that everyone really does have their own truth, and that's just the reality that we're facing today. Because we are forsaking God, unlike the people during the Renaissance period, we are watching the population of foolishness, of fools, rapidly increase. And it may not work out for us like it did for the people in 15th century Rome. But all we can do is trust God and lean on his promises. And I believe that he is faithful, which is why the Renaissance period was such a rich cultural example to us still today.